It's June 3rd, and the strange side of history awaits. Today, we have an artist left fighting for his life, survivors emerging from an aviation disaster, and the final moments of a species that would never return. Let's begin. On June 3rd, 1968, Andy Warhol walked into the factory, his strange and glittering Manhattan studio, not knowing the world around him was about to change forever. The factory was famous for its open doors. Artists, actors, models, musicians, and drifters passed through constantly. It was chaotic, creative, and almost impossible to control. And then Valerie Solanas arrived. She was a radical writer who had once moved through Warhol's orbit. But that afternoon, something had shifted. Inside the studio, surrounded by the strange machinery of fame and art, she pulled out a gun and fired. Warhol collapsed, and his injuries were devastating. For a moment, doctors feared he was gone, but after hours of emergency surgery, he survived. He came back from the edge, but he was not the same man. For the rest of his life, he lived with pain, scars, and the need to wear a surgical corset. The factory changed too. The free, open, unpredictable world he had created suddenly felt dangerous. Doors were locked, security was tightened, and the people around him were watched more carefully. One afternoon changed Warhol, his art, and the entire mood of the factory. On June 3rd, 1962, a chartered Air France Boeing 707 waited at Orly Airport near Paris. On board was 132 people, many of them artists, patrons, and civil leaders from Atlanta, returning home after a 3-week tour through Europe. It should have been the final stretch of an unforgettable journey. As the flight thundered down the runway, something went wrong. The pilots suddenly tried to abort the takeoff, but the jet was already moving too fast. Heavy with fuel, the aircraft raced past the end of the runway, broke apart, and erupted into flames. In seconds, a flight home became one of the deadliest aviation disasters the world had ever seen. Inside the wreckage, almost no one had a chance. 130 people were killed, but in the tail section, 2 flight attendants were still alive. Jacqueline Surmiger and Francois Deplace had been seated at the back of the aircraft when the plane tore apart, and somehow that section broke away from the worst of the fire. Injured and shocked, the 2 women escaped the burning wreckage and fled. Back in Atlanta, the news was devastating. An entire community had lost artists, leaders, friends, and family in a single morning. A dream trip through Europe ended in seconds before the plane could ever leave the ground. On June 3rd, 1844, 3 fishermen rowed towards a lonely rock off the cold waters of Iceland. The island was called Eldey, a steep and isolated place where the sea crashed against the black cliffs, and one of the Earth's rarest birds was hiding from extinction. The great auk was large, flightless, and almost ghost-like in its appearance. For centuries, it lived across the North Atlantic, but humans had hunted it relentlessly for meat, oil, feathers, and finally, museum specimens. By 1844, there was almost none left. On Elderly, the fishermen found what may have been the last breeding pair on Earth. The birds could not fly away, they could only waddle across the rocks while the men closed in. Then, the 2 great auks were killed, and during their struggle, their eggs were crushed. And with that, the entire species slipped into history. No storm, no asteroid, no ancient curse, just people, profit, and the belief that something rare was worth more dead than alive. The crushed eggs makes this story even darker. It was the last chance for another generation. Another day, another strange bite from history. Like, comment, and subscribe. Your next eerie dose is just a day away.